This is Dr. Mark Schillinger, founder of the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend, a rite of passage adventure camp for young men ages 13 to 20 to help them learn how to adapt to the challenges of the adult world. I'm also the founder of Challenging Teenage Sons, an organization that is dedicated to helping parents and their teen sons have more caring and cooperative relationships. Now, I want you to know that the word challenging does not imply that our sons are challenging. Although they may be, it means that we have forgotten as parents and really as a society how to challenge or arouse our teenage sons to become the happy, productive, and resilient young men we know they need to be. And trust me, they know they need to be. The title of this podcast is called Two Words That Automatically Bond You to Your Teen. When I was younger, when I was a teen, I suffered. I suffered from anxiety, depression. I never thought I was going to make it in the world. I just had a lot of self-doubt. I was determined not to take medication for my anxiety and depression. So I got into yoga, I got into meditation, I got into Buddhism, and I learned how to calm my mind down. And I learned this amazing concept. Two words. Here we go. Write them down if you need to. You'll remember them because I certainly did. And here I am 50 some odd years later telling you about it. The words are both and. Both is one word. The second word is and. Both and. Two words that have become lifesavers for me in countless stressful situations in my life. Basically, by learning mindfulness meditation, which, by the way, I teach every member of every family that I mentor, young men, young women, and the parents. Because in mindfulness meditation, you can become really good at learning how to observe things without needing to resolve anything. In other words, there's no need to interject, interrupt, intercede, do anything other than purely observe what's happening. It doesn't mean that you don't care about something. It just means that you can care and, right, both and. It means that you can care and you don't feel the need to do or say anything about it. So essentially, you're becoming indifferent. You can be passionate and indifferent. So this is key, both and. So the way that I want to explain this to you in this situation with your children is this. There's often a slide that I show young men and parents when I work with them, and it shows the picture of the number 9. And it shows one person standing in front of the number 9 and another person standing on the other side opposite the other person so that they're actually seeing a number 6. One person seeing a 6, one person seeing a 9. So in terms of perspective, they both see what they're seeing and they believe they know what they're seeing is the right perception. And in truth, none of them are wrong. They're both right. Both and. Two things can be true at the same time, and there's no need to resolve them. So what I learned from my early studies was that I can just let things be, and there could be 5 different points of view or 9 different points of view or 2, and just let them be as they are without any need to try to bring them together and organize them in any way. So why am I saying this to you? How does this relate to both and? First, let me take a little diversion and tell you about a couple of books that I'm really hot on right now, and that will help you understand why becoming a master of both and is important. Talk about one right now. It's called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. I've been watching his podcast now where he's interviewed by lots of people, probably about 15 of them now. And basically he's saying is that your teen is now probably the most anxious generation of adolescence that's probably ever existed in the history of the planet because they have so much stress, especially when it comes to digital devices. So this is really radical because your teens are already under lots of stress from social media, playing their video games, basically addicted to the dopamine rush that they're getting from their devices. So when you don't know how to be good at both and when they're talking, even if they're lying and you interrupt them and just start saying the stuff you've got to say and you're not giving them a chance to say what they got to say, they get even more anxious. So I know that you're good parents, you have the best of intentions, you want to jump in and give them the answer to life. And I'm just saying that that's not going to really work in this generation because if you are rude basically to them, trying to make your point, they have new parents. It's called the cell phone, the internet, social media. One of my secrets is what have I've often been labeled a teen whisperer. Really? It just simply means that I know how to not interrupt. Even when they're lying to me, I just listen to them carefully because I know they're trying to make a point. The whole idea is to not interrupt their flow. Let them say what they have to say. And then when they're done, you get to say what you need to say. It's important that they articulate what they're feeling because their prefrontal cortex, that executive functioning part of their brain, is not fully developed. So they may not even know how to say what they're feeling. So you let them say what they're feeling or thinking, even when it's a lie, and then you respond. Now, on other podcasts of mine, you've probably heard my 7-step communication technique for a teen brain. So if you can, please go find that because I don't want to use this time up for that. I do teach a brain science course for doctors on the brain science of stress management. I know a little bit about the brain and certainly how to communicate to a teen brain. So go find that podcast or email me and I'll send it to you. My point is that in that communication technique, you don't speak in the beginning. You let them say whatever they have to say, and then you speak. Let me give you a good example, a living example of how both and works in your house. It's been about a year or two now, a family that I was mentoring and actually still do from time to time, they came into my office and they walked in like separately. Like they didn't all walk in as a family, the young man and his parents, they all walked in kind of separately. So I knew something was up. So the mom sat next to me here at my desk. The father sat a little bit further away, And the young man was like, he took a chair and just sat in the other corner of my office. So something was up. So I said to the parents, why are you guys sitting like this? What happened? Parents told me the story that on Saturday night, this was a Monday, so it was pretty fresh in their mind. On Saturday night, their son was late for curfew, midnight on Saturday. He said he came home, he was smelling like was smoking weed, and he was 40 minutes late. He didn't call. He just walked in like nothing ever happened. So I said to the young man, dude, what happened? Like, why were you late? What up, bro? Like, tell me your side. So he goes, Doc, I was hanging out with my friends, and one of my friends, whose mom was late picking him up, I just felt like I shouldn't leave him. Like, I just wanted to stay there till the mom showed up, which wasn't until a lot later. So then when the mom showed up and took him home, I walked home. So I let him finish, and then I said, oh, I get it. You were being loyal. And his whole body language changed. Now, I didn't care if he was telling the truth or not. I just found him right. Like, I just said, oh, so you're being loyal. I get it. And then I said, and both and, which he knew what both and meant. He said, so both and you were also irresponsible. You were loyal and you were irresponsible. Now, in my work, we often define the virtue of responsibility as doing things you like to do and don't like to do until completion without reminders. He knew that definition. He knows he needs to be more responsible. So I said, you're being irresponsible. You failed to call your parents, and then you walk in like nothing ever happened. And he kind of sheepishly hung his head low and didn't really want to look at me for a minute, but he went, yeah. I said, bro, thank you for telling me the truth. So you had a both and. So now you're upset that your parents gave you a consequence, which is a whole nother topic that I have out on different podcasts because it's a very specific way to consequence young men and not punish them. So their parents had given him a consequence and he didn't want to do it because he didn't feel heard. So when I repeated the story back to him and said, oh, you were loyal and there's a consequence, he understood that. We weren't denying that he had did a good deed for his friend and he also had to clean it up and do the consequence. So that's one example of how that works. Now, just recently, we had our annual Young Men's Ultimate Weekend, our rite of passage adventure camp for young men. And throughout the weekend, I heard lots of young men tell me that they know that their cell phones are distractions and that it keeps them from getting in touch with who they are because they're so focused on the outside world. And they all admitted that cell phones make them anxious also because they think they have to keep up. I think it's now known as FOMO, fear of missing out. So they have to have these things in their hands all the time. Well, the thing that I was emphasizing to them at the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend was that this prevents them from actually getting to be in touch with who they are, what's really important to them. And that's the real anxiety. It's not the fear of missing out on the outside world, it's the fear of missing out on who they are. So at this weekend, the young men began to really own that. They got that. So I said, you can do a both and. You can do some keeping up on out there. You can keep up on social media if you need to. And you need to turn that damn thing off. You need to have the discipline, which I define as doing the same thing at the same time every day. So I recommended that they take 30 minutes a day, an hour a day, certainly an hour before bedtime to turn the thing off. And they'll be able to get more back in touch with who they are and hear their own emotions and their own thoughts. So they got that. So throughout the weekend, I hear young men saying out loud that they have ADHD or they're bipolar or they're on the spectrum and all these different things, which is fine. I mean, I get it. I have ADHD, depression, anxiety. I get it. And of course, I let them know that you can have all those things and you're still going to need to be responsible for your own well being if you're going to become mature and independent, which they get. They don't like to hear that. They know it's true. So I know this is a popular topic the last few years at the YMUW. So I decided to make my speech. I give this big speech in front of all the men and young men on Saturday night. So I want to tell you what the speech was because it was all about both and, but I want to give you a little bit of background that leads up to the events on Saturday night. Throughout the day on Saturday at the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend, our mentors do a great job of getting the young men to trust us. There's a lot of fun. There's low ropes courses. There's drumming. They get to make hip hop beats. They may do some community service on the land. They get to do a lot of things, but they're seeing that we're not their parents. We know how to communicate to them respectfully, and they do the things we ask them to do. The whole idea is to get them to trust us because as the day goes on, we're slowly getting them to reveal their emotions that they may not reveal to anybody. One of the exercises that we do is called taking off the mask. This activity was created by one of our mentors, Ashanti Branch, and it's where we invite them all to become aware of how they cover up their true thoughts and feelings by wearing a variety of masks where they don't reveal what's going on for them. It doesn't take the young man very long before he feels safe enough to talk about his emotions that he hides from the world, including from his parents. And as they do this, some of them cry, others just put their heads in their lap in sadness, and some of them can perfectly articulate that they do this in order to protect themselves and others, including their parents, actually. One of the reasons we do this during the day is because we want them to get ready to release all their tension behind their masks later that night, on Saturday night. So I'm leading up to this speech that I gave them. After dinner, when they've had some time to rest, they get blindfolded. They hear drums pounding. They know something's changing. We blindfold them and they go through a trust walk where they don't know where they're walking. They have to trust the person in front of them. And then they walk up some steps to a platform and they do a trust fall. The trust fall is preceded by the mentor saying, "Are you ready for your initiation?" The young men say yes. They have no idea what they're getting into. We say, "Grab your balls, lock your knees, fall straight back," which they do. And of course, they're caught by our mentors. Then they're gently lifted up. Their blindfold is taken off, and they separately and silently walk down to the water where the full moon, as I mentioned before, is reflecting off of the waves of Lake Berryessa. It was beautiful. This is all happening around 10 in the evening, maybe 11 in the evening. It's quite mystical. Once they arrive at the lake, they go through another ceremony called the worst day of your life. And this is where the young men are encouraged to open up their hearts, to reveal things to everyone that they probably have never shared with anyone. And man, do they share and reveal. We're all sitting around a fire pit as the sky darkens and the stars appear. They all share about their worst days. It's painful and it is mystical. And then after that, they're ready for their initiation into adulthood. And they go through a very physical and powerful grieving ceremony to let go of all their past pains and disappointments as a boy. It's physical and it's cathartic. The release of grieving is done within a few minutes with great intensity, physically and emotionally. And we call the ceremony letting go of the boy. Essentially, we let them know that they need to leave it here because if they're really going to become the man they want to be, they can't use their past pains and emotions as excuses for not growing up. The whole idea is for them to create a scar over their emotional wounding. Now, this doesn't mean that young men won't need more grieving or therapy or whatever process they may use to move past their pain. And it does mean that there's a way to release it quickly and deeply, which is how our ancestors had to do it, especially if a tribe was nomadic and they had to keep moving. So after the young men grieve, the adult men grieve because we need to do it also. And now the young men get to go in the circle where they were just grieving before, and they get to hold and help the adult men grieve. It's a beautiful thing to watch. And when it's all over, everybody looks way calmer and really relieved. Now, we do a big surprise to the young men. They don't know that their fathers have been listening to them grieve. They don't know that they've been up on the property, on the campus. So we bring the fathers out who are listening nearby in the woods. They're surprised to see their fathers for sure. The fathers come through and they find their sons and they're instructed to say something brief, but something about bonding and healing their relationship, regardless of how poor or wonderful their relationship may be. And it's a real tearjerker. We tell them both that this is the moment they can start building a healthier relationship. We tell the fathers that their sons are not boys anymore. They're young men. They have to treat them like young men. Then we get everybody into one big circle, the fathers, the young men, the volunteers. And this last week, there's about 160 dudes standing shoulder to shoulder at this point. And then I get to step into the circle every year to address them. It's a goosebumpy, tear-jerking thing for me to do every year. So, as I mentioned, the moon was up. It's about midnight now. It's almost a full moon, no clouds, lots of stars, and a beautiful lake with waves shimmering with light reflecting the glow of the moon. And this is what I shared with them about both and. I'm going to read you the speech because I always write it out before I say it. This is my speech about both and. Gentlemen, how magical and how blessed we are that we have all been brought here together tonight. What a great mystery. Take a moment to feel your feet on the earth, knowing that your feet are just like tree roots that sink into the earth in order to feel connected to something bigger than yourself, and that includes yourself and is yourself. Take a moment to look up at the sky, knowing that your eyes are just like laser beams that could see toward the end of the universe in order to feel connected to something bigger than yourself, and that includes yourself and is yourself. We all spend too much time feeling separate from ourselves and from each other and from the earth and from the sky. We appear distinct and we could never be different. We are all one reality appearing in many forms. We're standing on sacred ground inhabited by the tribes of the past. The Wapo, the Pomo, the Miwok Indian tribes stood on this very same land, feeling and honoring the same connection we're experiencing right now. Humans have stood together over hundreds of thousands of years like we are tonight, in awe. We are all worthy of respect, of holding ourselves in the highest regard as creatures of creation, creatively expressing ourselves. You're experiencing awe when you don't really quite understand what you're experiencing, and yet you know you need to feel it in order to feel whole and at peace with yourself. Let's acknowledge that our ancestors have made it possible for us to be here now by saying thank you to their efforts. Let's heartfully say thank you out loud, which we did 3 times. Then I continued. How many of you young men and adult men know that you need to respect yourself more, to esteem yourself with reverence? How many of you young men and adult men know that you need to love yourself more? How many of you young men and adult men know that your painful emotions and your negative thinking keep you from respecting and loving yourself more? I'm not saying that we shouldn't experience painful emotions or negative thinking. It's unavoidable to do so. And I am saying that we spend way too much time unnecessarily indulging our attention on them. I have a gift for you. Using a simple and powerful tool I'll give you tonight will guarantee that you can generate so much self-respect that you'll actually begin to love yourself. Are you interested in receiving the gift? The gift is 2 simple words. The word both, the word and. 2 words. Both and. You can be sad and you can do what you need in order to respect yourself and love yourself. You can be angry and you can do what you need to do in order to respect yourself and love yourself. You can think everyone and everything is a waste of time, and you can do whatever you need to do in order to respect yourself and to love yourself. This is not an either or world. It's not either I'm sad or I'm respectful. It's not either I'm angry or I'm respectful or loving myself. It's not either I'm frustrated because everyone and everything is a waste of time or I'm respecting and loving myself. You don't have to think that way for the rest of your life. It is not an either or world. It is a both and world. The truth of the matter is, both things can be true at the same time. You can be frustrated, you can be angry, you can be sad, and you can do the things you need to do in order to respect and love yourself. As long as you think it's either or and you give yourself this choice, you will be stuck. You know the feeling of being stuck? You get depressed, you lose motivation, you just simply stop caring. How many of you know exactly what I'm talking about? Young men, you've been through a serious ordeal at this rite of passage initiation. I'm proud of you. You're no longer boys. You're young men now. It's your choice to feel sad, angry, or frustrated, and to do nothing about it. Or you can choose to feel sad, angry, and frustrated, and do something about it. It's not up to your mommies and your daddies or your teachers or your friends. It can only be up to you now. Are you really feeling me on this? Can you understand what I'm saying? I'm not asking you if you like what I'm saying. I'm asking you if you understand what I'm saying. This decision to have feelings and to also do the right things to move your life in the right direction can only be yours. If you choose not to make the decision and focus only on having fun, you're not moving closer to becoming a man. You'll be a young man behaving like a boy. You're not going to be an adult man who can be happy, resilient, and productive. This rite of passage is where you get to make this adult choice. You can have ADHD, you can have depression, you can have anxiety, you can be on the spectrum, and you can be the man you always wanted to be. How do I know this? Because when I was your age, I had ADHD, I had anxiety, I had depression, and I still do. It runs in my family. And when I was a teenager, I wanted nothing more than to create positive, upbeat music, do something important to help the world be a better place, have a job that I really loved, be at peace with myself and the universe, and to have a loving family. I still have ADHD, anxiety, and depression, and it's way in the background of my life because I decided to move my life in the right direction. when I was your age, no matter how I felt. Currently, my music's on the internet. I founded the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend. I became a doctor. I'm deeply content with myself and my relationship to reality. And I have a sister, brothers, nephews, and nieces, a wife and children that I love dearly. If I can do this, trust me, brothers, so can you, if you choose. Now, to motivate yourself to bring these two words, both and, into your life, there's two other words I want to give you tonight. Most dudes love these two words. The words are fuck it. When men know they need to motivate themselves to do the right thing, they'll say these same two words in order to do whatever it takes to achieve their goals. And they say with a lot of enthusiasm something like this: fuck it, as in, I will do this. And it's also true that when men don't want to motivate themselves to do the right thing, they'll say the same two words with indifference, something like this: fuck it, as in, I won't do this. So now, young men and adult men, I'm going to ask you to say fuck it. You have two choices. Choice one is that you can say fuck it with a tone of voice that says you're going to do whatever it takes to do the inner and outer work to be the man you always wanted to be. Choice two is that you can say fuck it, that says you're not going to do whatever it takes to do the inner outer work in order to be the man you always wanted to be. Choose wisely. We're going to say fuck it 3 times on my count. Remember, you can say it like you don't care or you completely care. Okay, on my count, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Everybody said fuck it 3 times, super loud. Then I got right back to my speech. Remember the 2 words that can lead you in the right direction no matter how you feel or whatever challenging conditions you find yourself. Remember both and. You can experience tough times and you can motivate yourself to become happy, resilient, and productive. That's what our ancestors did, and so can we. Choose wisely. True. After I gave my speech, all the men went into the kitchen area and we ate like there was no tomorrow. We just celebrated. And by that time, it was about 1:30 in the morning, and then the fathers had to leave the site so that we could carry on our rite of passage event. The next morning, the young men were up at 5:45 a.m. for a sunrise ceremony, which I lead with other mentors. It's a beautiful ceremony with the young men walking slowly to the lake. At one point, one of the mentors tells them to submerge their entire body in the water so that they can cleanse all of their past pain and start their life together. Both release their pain and now start fresh. After the ceremony was over, a young man came up to me to thank me for letting him know that even though he has strong feelings about the things that frustrate him and anger him, he realized that he needs to take responsibility for how his life is going to turn out. It's really cool. He stuck out his hand and shook my hand, and after he thanked me, I was really happy to know that he really got it, the power of both and. So, as we wind down this podcast, I want to say to you parents, please remember that whatever has happened in the past with your teen son is now over and you can start fresh. You can. I've been a family mentor for 25 years, and I always tell families that it's never too late to move their family in the right direction. So I'm telling that to you now. You can be experiencing agitation in the relationship with your son or even your spouse, and you can mentor your son to be the best version of yourself, and you can give your best effort to restoring the relationship with your spouse. So for you parents, I want to tell you something really important. I mean, I say this with goosebumps and a tear in my eye, no kidding. I know it's not easy having intimate relationships. It requires all sorts of vulnerability and persistence. That's a both and right there. Vulnerability and persistence. So I say this to you if you truly want to model to your children what it's really like to have healthy relationships, what it really looks like. So when you are upset with your spouse about something, you can still make love. You can still hold hands. You can still go for a walk. You can still cook food together and eat together. Both can be true. They do not have to resolve in the moment. Now, of course, I'm not talking about severe emotional or physical abuse that you may be experiencing. That's a whole exception. And trust me, that's an exception. You don't have to resolve an issue in the moment that it's in. You need to tell your children that by showing them that you can disagree and still have a great relationship. Most challenges take time to resolve. They don't happen right in the moment. When you can get to that level of self-mastery, you'll be letting your children know that healthy relationships can adapt to challenging times by remaining focused on the love and affection and also remaining focused on resolving the issue. Please remember, both and. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you want to communicate with me directly, I will respond to everyone who communicates with me. Here's how you reach me. info@challengingteenagesons.com.